folks, welcome to your very first side quest. In this quest, what you will do is you will learn how to break apart research articles. So you're going to learn all the different parts of a research article, and then after that you'll have a chance to practice breaking down actual journal articles. So these journal articles are going to be expansions on what we are learning in class, and they're going to be looking at a current topic of research that relates to our in-class, whatever unit we're covering. So first of all, let's talk about why we read research articles. And so I'm going to talk about three different groups of people, scientists, students, and lay people, so everybody else. And we're going to talk about why those different groups might want to be able to read a research article. So first of all, scientists. So one reason that scientists read research articles is because that's how you keep up to date with your own field. Additionally, reading research articles helps give scientists ideas for future research. A scientist might also read a research article as a peer reviewer to help that another scientist improve it to put it in a journal. So that really is why scientists read research articles. Let's talk about why students read research articles, since you guys are all students right now. So one reason that students read research articles is to learn how science is done. So you learn a little bit more about the scientific process outside of high school. You also can read research articles in order to learn about what is actually happening in the world of physics. So you can learn more about modern research and maybe get a sense for the kinds of topics you might want to study after you leave high school. After all, the physics that we talk about in class is really not the same as the physics that you would be doing if you were to do physics in college and beyond. So finally, why would somebody who is not a scientist and not intending to be a scientist want to be able to read research articles? Well, one really important reason is because that is one way to make sure that the information that you're getting is true. So there are a lot of newspaper articles about science, but not all newspaper articles are written very accurately, or even if they are accurate, they sometimes will make it seem as though the conclusion of the study is a lot more extreme than it is. So for example, if you've seen an article about, if you've seen newspaper articles saying, oh, blueberries cure cancer, or coffee causes cancer, those articles are often based off of scientific research articles, but are taking the conclusion to a very extreme level. So it helps you realistically evaluate popular science, so evaluate the science in the news. And finally, a lot of the things that are talked about in these articles are really interesting. And so being able to understand these articles can help you learn about some really cool things. So you can learn about dark matter for physics. For biology, you can learn about some really interesting medical changes. So somebody, for example, might be able to learn more about diseases or about cures for different diseases. So all sorts of different things. For chemistry, there's some really interesting things going on with material science and with climate science. So it's just interesting. And if you're able to break apart any research article, you can really read about whatever catches your interest, whatever you want to learn more about. So here are three different viewpoints for why reading research articles is important. Let's talk about how we actually can break them down and get information out of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by talking about the sections of a research article. So it's important to know what to expect in each section. So let's start with the abstract. The abstract is really a summary of the entire article. So if you read the abstract, what you'll learn is you will learn the purpose of the study, you'll learn the hypothesis, you'll learn whether that hypothesis was supported by the data. And so really you're getting kind of the short version of the study. You're getting kind of the key pieces of the study. So that's the abstract. Second, we've got the introduction. And in the introduction, what you'll learn about is the research question, the hypothesis, and you'll also learn about the research that this article is based off of. Because most science is not something that's pulled out of thin air. Most research is really based around some sort of theoretical framework or some sort of prior research that has happened. Next, we have the method section. And for most lay people and even students, the method section is actually one of the less useful sections to read. The method section is really useful for other scientists primarily because they can see whether the methods in the study were accurate and appropriate, and then they can also see whether those methods are replicable so they can try to do the study in their own lab and see if they get the same results. For a student or for a layperson, that first part, seeing if the methods make sense, is something that's important, but you may not you may not be able to always understand the methods because sometimes they can get into very, very specific pieces of the science. So for example, a lot of physics papers will talk about the engineering, or they'll talk about some mathematical evaluations they did, and that can be hard for somebody who's not very familiar with that specific area of research to understand. However, what they do talk about is how the research was done. And in some ways, sometimes they'll also talk about things like like some of the ways that they processed data. Most data processing, however, is going to happen in the results section. So in the results section, we'll have a processing of the data. So we'll see whether the trend that you see, for example, in the data is significant. And what you'll get there is some sort of conclusion regarding the hypothesis. But this information is going to be very focused on that numerical part of it. So you're not going to see much discussion of strengths and weaknesses of the experiment or what the meaning of the results are in a theoretical framework. But what you'll get is what are the actual numerical results, numerical trends. Error analysis is another important part of the results section. And it's something that you will be doing a lot of in IB Physics. So finally, our last section is the discussion section. And this is actually my favorite part of a research article because this is the section that talks about how the results matter, why the results matter in a wider context. So what it'll do is this discussion section will bring back the theoretical framework for the study that was talked about in the introduction. And then we'll talk about how the results fit into that theoretical framework. And if those results don't fit into the theoretical framework, the discussion will have some theories as to why. In your discussion, there also may be discussions of further studies or potential sources of error in the experiment. So this is really that really interesting meat of the results. It's taking the results and it's interpreting them for a wider audience. So there you have it, folks, the key sections of a research article. Before I finish this up, I want to talk about what the most important parts of a research article will be to understanding the research. So first of all, you should start always by reading the abstract. Just start by trying to get a summary of what the article is about. Because if you don't understand that, then you're going to struggle a lot. Second, the introduction and the discussion. So the introduction and the discussion often talk about a little bit more of a qualitative discussion of what's going on. So the introduction contextualizes the research and helps you understand why the research was done. And then the discussion does the same thing for the results. So it talks about what the results were, and then with those results, fits them into the theoretical framework and talks about why they're significant in the greater realm of the field. So if you really, as a layperson, are trying to understand an article, the abstract, introduction, and discussion will give you most of what you need. The last two parts of the research article, the methods and the results, are helpful for scientists to figure out whether the methods and results in this research, whether the research was done in a legitimate way. For you as a student and for a layperson, they can be useful in the same way. However, one caveat, for some research, it can be very hard to understand the methods and results. So this is a part of the research article where you may want to talk to an expert of some kind. So reach out to a teacher or a professor or a friend who studies that field, and see if they can maybe help you interpret the methods and interpret the results to figure out whether this research was done in a legitimate way. However, all of this is to say that reading research is important. It's an important skill to develop, but it's also a skill that you have to develop. So it may be hard to understand research articles when you first start reading them. but the more you do it, the easier it'll get. So go ahead and get started with your practice, and we will see how you do. Have fun and enjoy learning about the wonders of research going on right now.